It was a lie, but she wasn't about to explain that this dress was a one-off design, that it had taken her classmate hours to hand paint, that she'd only just finished it this afternoon, and that they'd quickly taken some photos, after which Fiorella had decided to cut through the pool house to avoid seeing too many people on the way back to her college dorm. She'd not expected to see anyone while she was in it. There was no escaping who she was, but she'd had no idea Jaxon Greene was so much man, which was stupid of her given that reputation. She'd somewhat rudely assumed his attraction would be fortune-related, not physique. But of course, he'd have it all brilliance brawn bank balance. But no soul remember. "If I can trust you to wait here a moment," he added, with that wicked curve still on his lips. "I'll change into something that won't negatively impact on your brand." "Sounds great," she cooed. He shot her another look and stalked in the direction of the change rooms. To her shame, she couldn't resist watching as he walked away. Yes, he was so very much man. But once he was out of sight, she checked the locket. The precious photos inside were safe and dry, and she breathed out and put it safely into the small bag she had over her shoulder. Then she messaged the classmate who she'd modeled the dress as a favor for to check she wouldn't mind her wearing it to an event. And then Jaxon reappeared. She tried not to stare, but her gaze was apparently glued to his form. She was used to men in suits, but despite that perfect fit and impeccable tailoring, his all-black ensemble looked dangerous. Or perhaps it was that look in his eyes as he approached her unrelenting, intensely focused, and utterly sure of himself. Her pulse picked up. He was a shark. "Very nice, these facilities." He sent her a mocking look as he offered his arm for her to take. "It's a shame their use is so limited. There's a much bigger pool for the swim squad and the water polo players." She had to remind herself to breathe evenly as she walked out of the building with him. Her fingers lightly rested on his forearm, but the heat and strength of him seared through that expensive fabric, and she wondered just how hot she'd feel if she actually touched him skin to skin. "This is just for the exclusive use of princesses." Her father had insisted upon the swimming pool arrangement when he'd finally agreed to let her study abroad. She'd immediately acquiesced. It had been so incredible that he'd allowed her to leave Triscari, she'd have said yes to almost any stipulation. But since his death 9 months ago, she'd not thought to amend the requirement. In truth, she still needed the privacy. It was going to be decommissioned. "But your dad paid for it to be refurbished. Wasn't that good of him?" Fiorella forced a smile. Was Jaxon determined to think badly of her? "If you disapprove, why do you want me to go to this dinner with you?" she asked, lifting her hand off him. "You know we can't help who our parents are." He paused. "That's very true." Something fleeting crossed his expression. "He wanted to spoil you. It's nice that he cared." "He didn't want to spoil me. He wanted to protect me," she replied without thinking. Her heart ached at the plain truth of it. Her father had become so distant after her mother had died, and the only love he'd then shown was by isolationist control. If it hadn't been for her brother Alec, she'd still be virtually captive in the palace. "Wasn't that good of him?" he echoed with surprisingly soft astuteness. She faltered, unwilling to delve further into that old source of pain. "But now your brother understands my need for more freedom." Her heart eased as she remembered Alec's news. "He's always understood that. I owe him a lot." She just wished there was more she could do for him. Jackson's luminous gaze met hers in that uncomfortably assessing way. "So you have more freedom now, you get to do things you couldn't before. I get to make my own choices." She nodded and then shot him a look. Unless some guy coerces me into dating him. Relax, princess. His grin returned. It's not a date. It's one favor in return for another. Was that all it was? She swallowed, struggling to ignore the warring reactions within her relief. Disappointment, anticipation, anyway. Well, if you'll excuse me a moment, she said as they walked out of the pool complex. I'll brief my security. She saw Jaxon look at the woman standing a few meters away. Of course she'll attend with you. That's not necessary. I can handle you. She answered with far more bravado than she felt. There'll be press, Jaxon warned. You know that, right? Fiorella suddenly laughed and shook her head. There's always press. Sure enough, there was an army of cameras and questions, and the second they saw her arrive at the venue with Jaxon, they pounced on them both. How long have you known Jaxon Greene? Who designed your dress, Princess Fiorella? Fiorella braced herself. She'd been sheltered not just from men, but media intrusion too, and she'd never really been taught how to deal with them. But she tried to ignore the questions she didn't want to answer and smile for the photographers. My dress was made by a fellow student here at Wynyard Millie Townsend, she explained, hoping the wobble in her voice wasn't audible. She hand-painted the design. It's a work of art, don't you think? You didn't tell me you were wearing another student's dress, Jaxon muttered as he guided her past the photographers and into the privacy of the corridor inside, with a firm hand on her waist that made her stand taller and have to resist the urge to lean into him. I didn't get the chance to explain because you were too busy judging me. He chuckled. Can you blame me for making assumptions based on appearances? She shot him a look. Of course I can blame you. Everyone makes assumptions, princess. I bet you've made them about me. The shock on your face when you found out my name? What was it that surprised you so much? She considered her reply and decided on candor. You're better looking than I expected. His jaw dropped. But your manners are shocking. He stared at her a second and then laughed appreciatively. I like your honesty, princess. It's refreshing. Do you? She smiled. Why don't you try it? Meaning, her heart thudded. Why not tell me the real reason why you want me here as your date tonight? I already have. I want you to entertain my friend, he said simply, but his gaze on her intensified. His wife is a fan of every royal family on the planet, and I'd like them to have a night they'll always remember. He really was doing this for someone else. The stab of disappointment was stupid. Shouldn't she feel relieved he didn't want a date with her? But despite that unnecessary nick of personal disappointment, she couldn't resist leaning closer just to whisper. So you lied when you said you had no soul, no conscience, and no empathy. I didn't lie, Fiorella swallowed at his tight-lipped reply. Henry is one of the few people who matter to me. Oh, why so few? But Fiorella just nodded. Henry, she repeated, and his wife? Rose, she nodded. Got it. Work mode already, he questioned. Is it always duty, or do you actually enjoy it? I enjoy it when it's my choice, remember? She muttered back, hardly about to admit that she did very few public appearances because she'd had little experience or preparation before leaving Triscari. She'd worked hard to catch up on the skills she was missing. You chose the deal I offered. He chuckled and flicked her cheek with a fingertip. Do you choose all of your royal appearances? Okay, she conceded with a rueful smile. I have an assistant who screens them. Except her lovely assistant Hester had gone home to Triscari with Alec earlier this afternoon, and they hadn't wanted or needed Fiorella to go with them. Because to Fiorella's total shock, they were getting married. But she couldn't process that now. Instead, she drew a breath and walked beside Jaxon Greene into the sumptuous and sparkling reception hall. Meeting Jackson's former teacher Henry and his wife Rose was easier than she'd anticipated. They were curious and kind, and she found commonality in discussing their studies. Jaxon was called away several times, but Fiorella kept her focus on the elderly couple. It was an hour into the drink when someone called for silence, and to her surprise, Jaxon stepped onto a small dais to make a speech. I thank Wynyard for your invitation, and it was a great privilege to attend today's ceremony. But the truth is, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am today if it weren't for the one person who encouraged my incessant questioning, who helped me figure out how to find the answers for myself, and who believed in me when no one else did. He's the one who ought to be honored. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'd like to announce the establishment of the Henry Butler Center for Creativity. Thunderous applause echoed around the vast ballroom. Henry's cheeks flushed while tears filled Rose's eyes. Fiorella turned back to see Jaxon's brilliant gaze slide from his former mentors to hers. Something fierce flashed in his eyes before his gaze ducked from hers, too. Intuitively, Fiorella realized he hated public speaking and appearances as much as she did. He'd done it only for the elderly man standing beside her, and he'd wanted to make it wonderful. And suddenly, she was quite desperate to help him do just that. 2 hours later, Jaxon uncomfortably realized he was jealous. Rose was glowing. Jax would be too, if Fiorella gave him her undivided attention like that. And seeing her listen so intently to Henry was disconcerting. Ah, Jaxon! Henry beamed as Jax finally escaped the university president who'd been waxing lyrical about his endowment. I was just telling Fee about when you were my student. He was telling Fee ants crawled down his spine. I don't think she'd be interested. Oh, but I am. She smiled directly at him. I didn't realize Henry was your elementary school teacher. He stiffened, not wanting to venture down his history at all. Dance with me. Distraction was definitely necessary, as was distance from Henry and Rose and all the memories they were apparently determined to unearth. But the princess didn't blink at his rather rudely uttered order. Is this part of the deal? She asked as he took her hand. Shouldn't I dance with Henry? The small contact with her didn't soothe the irritation swirling through him. All it made him want to do was haul her closer and touch more of her. What did he tell you? Nothing you need worry about. He's proud of you. She stopped a few meters from the dance floor. But I'm about to let you down. How? Was she about to walk out on him? Her hand squeezed his. I can't dance, she whispered. He laughed. But he swiftly sobered when he saw the chagrin in her eyes. He tightened his grip before she could slide her hand free. You're serious? She nodded urgently. Please, let's not. It won't be the success you're after, and the evening's gone so well. He didn't care about the evening anymore. Henry was happy that was enough. Now Jaxon wanted something for himself. How can you not dance? You're a princess. Don't you get trained in all the... He broke off as she rolled her eyes. No, she said. There's no degree in princess. I was never taught to dance. I had governesses at home and zero social life until I came here. Zero social life. Never taught to dance. He frowned, but a few things fell into place. Her nerves in front of the photographers, her passing mention of her father's protectiveness. Perhaps this princess wasn't the socially polished party girl he'd initially assumed her to be. Okay. He made himself release her as he realized his mistake. Princess Fiorella wasn't spoiled, and she wasn't a party princess, and she wasn't to be his sparkling distraction. Bitter disappointment burned. Then I guess we should call it a night. A flashing glint in her deep brown eyes echoed the sting inside him. His skin tightened at the revealing expression. But she wasn't a practiced flirt either, and he just knew he had to ease off. "I'll take you back to your residence," he added hoarsely. After the short drive, she smiled at him tightly. "Thank you. I had a nice evening." "That's not just polite princess talk." He couldn't help asking, unable to resist prolonging the night for the merest moment more. "No, I mean it. They're lovely people. What you did for Henry was amazing." "It was nothing," Jaxon said briefly. "He deserves more." It clearly meant a lot to him. She got out of the car, but then paused. "What's wrong?" he asked as he got out to escort her to her door. "Nothing." But her smile was fixed. "Fiorella." He frowned as she avoided his gaze. Was she stifling panic? You don't need to see me inside. I'm fine." Oh, there was something wrong. He stiffened. Was she afraid of him, Fiorella? He frowned and then deliberately unfrowned and tried to reassure her. "I'm not about to try it on. I only want to walk you to your door to see you there safely. You recklessly sent your guard away." "I know." She groaned, and her faint smile morphed into one that screamed mortification. "But I can't get into my rooms." "You what?" He stared up at the building. "Hester's not there. She's gone. I forgot my bag when I left earlier because I was distracted by their news and I was running late to meet Millie and then You don't have your key? Can't you call your personal protection officer? I told her I was fine and that I wasn't leaving campus. I don't want to bother her or the caretaker and..." She faced him. "You don't need to be held up by my stupidity. I'm not leaving you out here alone." "I don't need protection." She gritted her teeth. "I'm perfectly safe." "Okay." He glanced around the dimly lit courtyard. "So, are you planning to sleep in the doorway?" Fiorella had no plan at all. She just wanted to die of embarrassment. Jaxon turned back to face her and was silent for a fraction too long. "Come on," he finally growled. "You can stay with me. I have an entire suite with more than one bed, so relax, I'm not propositioning you, princess." "I know that," she said stiffly, trying to suppress the heat building in her cheeks because there was that part of her wishing he would. Wasn't he Jaxon Greene Slayer? Had she been imagining that look in his eyes all evening? "It's a short flight away. How is your security team going to feel about that?" "Flight?" She frowned. "Helicopter. At night, is it safe?" She looked at him, barely resisting the urge to gnaw on her lip. "I've never flown in a helicopter." "You..." His gaze narrowed. "But your brother has the most outrageous private jet ever commissioned. So it's super safe, and even then, I've only been on it a few times to get from Triscari to here and back again." "You've not been anywhere else." His eyes widened, and he suddenly straightened. "Well, then you get all the choices now, right? Night on the doorstep or flight in a helicopter." Fiorella couldn't tear her gaze from him as he stood towering above her, tall and bright-eyed, and with that wickedly challenging smile on his mouth. There was no overprotective father, no guard, no one watching. And Jaxon was right. It was her choice. Except this time, there really wasn't one. An hour later, Fiorella was strapped into a plush passenger seat of a helicopter and gazing across the lights of the metropolis below. "Nervous?" he asked. "No." She shook her head. "I understand the physics of how it flies." His smile quirked. "Okay, so who's Hester?" Through the headphones, his voice sounded wickedly intimate. She knew they were using a private channel and the pilot couldn't hear them. "She was my roommate and study mentor. Now she's my paid assistant. She's very reserved." She bit her lip, but the truth babbled out because she needed to share it with someone. "She's gone to Triscari with Alec. They left this afternoon. They're getting married. Isn't that amazing? I still can't believe it." "Your assistant is marrying your brother. Apparently they fell for each other, and I didn't even realize. Jaxon swiveled to glance into her eyes. And you don't think it might have anything to do with the fact that he has to get married in order to be crowned king? She stared back at him. You think it's some kind of convenient arrangement? You don't. No. She shook her head vehemently. You don't know Hester or Alec, and you didn't see them. He laughed. Did she have sparkles in her eyes? Actually, she did. And Fee fully regretted telling Jaxon any of it now, because for a second there she'd forgotten he was a cynical toad who bullied people into doing what he wanted. Those sparkles are just lust, princess. You're wrong. What made you so cynical? Do you even know lust, princess? He suddenly challenged with a low growl. Do you know that hot wet can't get enough lust? She froze, yet at the same time her innards were melting, because she might have felt something approaching that a little earlier today. It fades, princess. He crushed her softly, every time. That heat swirled within her and mixed with wistfulness. Something else can't grow alongside it. Something stronger, more enduring. Like a cancer. You really don't think they could actually be in love? She watched his cynically amused reaction and rolled her eyes. You don't believe in love. He rolled his eyes even more exaggeratedly. Let me guess you do. Of course I do, and I bet underneath that slimy exterior you do too. Slimy exterior. He shot her an arrogantly outraged look. Slimy! That whole slippery can't-be-caught thing you have going on. Jaxon Greene, billionaire playboy. He laughed so hard it was insulting. Maybe you don't give any woman enough of a chance, she mused, wishing she could score a point somehow. Maybe you move on too quickly. He shook his head. Maybe I have too much work to do. Maybe you just haven't met someone who matters enough yet, she rebutted firmly. Or maybe you have, and she hurt you. He shook his head. Or maybe you haven't grown out of your sweet and romantic phase. She gritted her teeth. You know I get that you love your work, so do I. Work really matters. I hate being interrupted by anyone, even Alex sometimes. But he's someone I'd always make time for. There should always be people who come first. Maybe when you meet her, you'll realize. When I meet her? He laughed again. Oh, Fiorella, you really are sweet and romantic and so naive. She might have been sheltered, but she wasn't stupid. And you really are a toad. Look at Henry and Rose. Ah, he shrugged. But they're the exception. There's always an exception. So why can't Alec and Hester be an exception? She asked triumphantly. Why can't you? You're already exceptional. To her surprise, his smile faded. Because no one gets it all, Fiorella. That silenced her. Because as much as she didn't want to agree with him, she had the horrible fear he was right. She'd seen it. She'd felt it. He watched her curiously as the helicopter descended. Not going to argue with me. She shook her head, struck by a wave of something unsettling. Why do you think it is? Why can't we have it all? We? He asked mockingly as he guided her out of the helicopter and into the waiting car. I know I have a perfect life. Fiorella stared out the window as they moved through Manhattan. Do you? His soft doubt unsettled her. Of course. How completely lucky am I? I'm financially secure. I get to study my passion. My brother wants what's best for me, which he defines as my freedom. He doesn't want me burdened with royal duty. It's why he fought for me to be allowed to come here to study. Her gaze dropped. And why I never need go back. I can choose to do whatever I want. But she swallowed, feeling foolish as they pulled up outside an apartment building with amazing swiftness. But if Triscari isn't my home, then where is... Jaxon was silent for a second as he gazed into a security camera lens by the elevator. As the door slid open, he turned to her.
Maybe you'll have to find your own.
Alone. She didn't really want to be alone, but people were hard to find and hard to hold on to. Plenty of people do. Jaxon hadn't he? His teacher had told her that. And now she gazed about his massive penthouse apartment. Henry worries about you, she said absently as she took in the soft, luxurious furnishings. The coziness surprised her for some reason, and the wall of books fascinated her.
He what?
Worries, she murmured, studying the spines of the impressive library. He thinks you're lonely.
He told you that.
Jaxon laughed dismissively and took a seat on the enormous sofa.
He just can't believe people don't want the same things from life that he does.
What things does he want? Jaxon paused. The same as you, I suspect. Happiness. His smile twisted. I don't find that in the same things he does. But he did save me from a life of crime and taught me that I could use my strengths to get what I wanted legitimately. Crime? I was going to be a hacker. Wow. Really? She perched a safe distance from him but couldn't resist inquiring more. Why did Henry save you? Where were your parents?
My father wasn't around from the start. I'm not actually sure who he is and have no desire to find out. Why suffer that rejection twice over?
His small smile tightened.
Don't feel sorry for me, Princess.
Why shouldn't I? She answered lightly to hide the hit inside. My mom died when I was very young. My father just last year. So I'm an orphan and my lovely older brother doesn't want to burden me with anything, so I can spare a little sympathy for you. I'm sorry your dad wasn't around for you when you needed him.
I didn't need him,
she swallowed. What about your mother? She wasn't around either. There was a hard glint in his eye. For a while, but she was lonely and unhappy about it. Oh, she wondered what that meant exactly.
We're no longer in touch.
He shrugged.
Don't be sorry about that either, Princess. I have a good life. The world is mine.
He gestured toward the window.
Because you're not afraid to take risks.
Because I've had nothing before and survived, so I know I can survive again if I were to lose everything. And I like being alone. Yes, he had that innate confidence in himself and in his abilities. But she felt sorry that they'd been forged through such a fight. If you like being alone, why did you invite me back? His lips twisted.
Just one night is never an issue.
Yes, he was a shark. She'd known that, and she'd said yes anyway. And now that heat was back and her heart was racing and she couldn't look away from his startlingly blue-green gaze. But he suddenly glanced away from her, a frown pleating his forehead. So seeing we're doing the questions, why not talk me through what you're specializing in?
Seriously, bioluminescence.
His eyebrows lifted.
Like those scary-looking fish deep in the abyss that have their own little lamp.
Kind of, she said, grinning. Do you want to give us all the ability to glow in the dark or something? He suddenly leaned forward, clearly more interested in it than she'd expected. She smiled. There are many possible applications.
Yeah, nothing could be better than being able to glow in the dark.
She laughed.
Actually, you'd be surprised. Tell me more about it.
Seriously. Somehow, she lost track of time. The topic expanded, segued, narrowed again on his latest project on her lab work. He wasn't just an attentive listener, he was fascinating to talk to. She didn't remember curling her feet up on the sofa or sliding down to rest her head so she was more comfortable. She certainly didn't remember the moment he put the soft throw over her to keep her warm. But she remembered the second she woke. She was being held in a warm cocoon. She lay still as she realized he was lying behind her, one arm curled around her waist, holding her close so she couldn't fall.
His other arm was her pillow. "That's the first time I've fallen asleep on the sofa in years," he murmured behind her, having sensed she was awake. "That's the first time I've fallen asleep on the sofa at all." She sat up awkwardly and swung her legs to the floor. She took in a deep breath as she turned to face him. She truly was sorry. He was unbearably gorgeous. His tie long discarded, his shirt half unbuttoned, his hair unruly, and his eyes so full of sleepy sexiness. Her body temperature soared. "I'm so sorry." Because why was it that the first time she spent the night with a man, she'd remained fully clothed? And Jaxon Greene, the guy, dated a different woman every week but wasn't interested in her. That was horrible. And now he was watching her with a sexy half smile on his gorgeous face. "Are you, Princess?" he said huskily. "I'm not sorry at all."